And good evening everybody, welcome to the studio this evening where we'll be doing some more of this cottage. I wish I could get rid of the glare from that light and do that a little bit. Wonder if it just turn it off for the moment. Theme Hospital, good evening, welcome to the studio this evening. I'm not sure whether that's better with or without the light. I can't leave it like that for now. I trust you are well this evening, Theme Hospital, and looking forward to the weekend. Just put my glasses away, keep them safe. And we'll put the white gloves on. I'm not too bad, thank you, Theme Hospital. It's a bit warm here in the studio. We're about 26 degrees, so I have an air conditioner running. So hopefully the noise isn't too bad, and if it is too bad, it's too bad. Because it's keeping the place cool. But apart from that, it's been a bit of an odd day. I think we might have some... No, I don't think we're going to have any rain tonight. That's a pity, it's probably going to be quite warm. Anyway, I'm going on with some more of this. Actually, where's my reference? There it is. Not any particular reason why I'm looking at that, because it's, other than the outline shape, there's nothing particularly like it. Oh, okay, that's not a problem. I'm glad you can. It's a good microphone as well. Filtering out quite a bit of the background noise. Okay, so just filling in more stones around here. So do you have anything awesome planned for the weekend, Theme Hospital? I'm getting heckled at this end.
What?
There is a difference between there's one advantage with trolls in chat, and that is I can press the ban button.
We don't say awesome.
There's nothing anyway.
Is he American? No.
Okay, fair enough. Sorry, I'm getting comments in my right ear.
Oh, it's not so British.
Dear. But anyway. Unfortunately, that's not an option, Theme Hospital. I'm getting comments along the lines that in England you don't say awesome. I don't know. I mean, I think a beautiful view is awesome,
We don't say it, it's American.
and other things. But you know what? Well, now I'm getting laughed at.
You don't say it. That's not
Yeah.
good.
Now this is where my wife starts to wonder just how sensitive the microphone is that's in front of me. And I wanted to maybe sharpen the end of this a little bit. That's what I was going to get out tonight, or try and find, was a honing stone. Never mind, I'll do that another day. Oh dear. Yes. What I don't actually know is whether she was actually watching it. She's just gone out of the room at the moment, but I don't know whether she was actually watching it or just listening. So she could have been seeing chat. I don't know. Anyway, it makes a change that she actually watched part of the stream. But then I get, as you may or may not have heard, odd comments about what I say. We're all international. Doesn't, you know, there's nothing English or American or anything like that. So I just suppose there are odd words that are different, but well, I'm sat down, so if I look that way, I can see. Looking that way, I'm looking at my monitor. I've got a monitor in front of me with the broadcast on it. So the OBS window is, where I'm looking now is the OBS window. I'll show you. So a bit of So that's what I was looking at, and of course the top left there is the output from OBS. So I was just when I look up, that's generally what I'm looking at, just to check that. Oh, I've got a reference picture just to the left, so I'm just checking out that you can see what I'm doing or stuff like that. And I've also got a chat window in just to the right there and one over here, so it's a bit of an awkward setup in order to be able to see it. At some point what I'm going to try and do is put something like a small screen just here next to this camera, so that one's pointing at my face, and that's so that when I'm looking down you can see my face rather than the bald patch on the top of my head, which isn't particularly interesting, not that the rest of it is either. But I want to try and put a small monitor here just to one side, so I can put chat on there so I can actually look at that without having to look up at the screen or to one side. But it takes time. Get that repositioned. So I don't think you'd have noticed when I'm looking that way how tall she is, but she's about the same height as I am, which is what am I? Somewhere around 6'8". So no. Apart from that, in front of me is a brick wall, and no comments about that. Right. Don't give bricks, that's what I'm doing here. Yeah, stones. So just roughly drawing in stones at the moment, and then after I've roughly drawn them all in, I can then go back and increase the texture and the different shades on them. I keep saying it, but it's quite hard to be random with things like this. Now these sort of stone cottages are built on dry stone walling techniques, even though these have mortar in them. So the stones aren't exactly random. They're laid such that ultimately they create layers, but yeah, and the stones aren't regular or anything like that. They're all different shapes and sizes, and they select the ones to fit in the particular space. But to all intents and purposes, that means different shapes are placed randomly, and they're not all the same length and things like that. And it's actually quite difficult to keep that sort of random placement of odd stones and different shapes. So I don't know if anybody's interested in tennis. I have I've sort of relatively recently been informed, shall we say, that Andy Murray has not got through his current round. So if you're interested in English players winning Wimbledon, at least in the men's single, it's not going to happen this year. Now whether that's of any interest to anybody, I don't know. I'm kind of half interested. Not particularly a fan of tennis. I'm not particularly not a fan of tennis. and I don't particularly follow anybody, but it's always nice when somebody from your own country wins something, I guess. And since he did win a gold medal in the Olympics, I think everybody was really hoping he was going to do something good this year, but it doesn't seem like it, unfortunately. You're about 50-50. Yeah, it's I don't mind watching it if I'm watching it, if that makes sense, and it probably doesn't. Yeah, if my wife wants to watch it, it's not a problem. I don't watch a great deal of television anyway, and I'm not. This is not as bad as Eurovision. Oh well, that's true. But it depends. I mean, tennis is serious, though, isn't it? I think what well, when I get a chance, what I'm going to do is see what the Formula the Formula E is like to watch, because that could be quite an interesting thing, the electric Formula car racing. But if I'm going to watch a sport, I tend to more watch things like sailing or some of the more unusual sports, shall we say, that you don't see on television very often. I did that a lot in the Olympics. I watched things like the archery and the shooting and the sailing more than I watched any of the mainstream sports. Quite like watching the cycling as well. Do you have a particular favourite sport theme hospital that you might watch, or is it just a case of if there's something on you'll watch it, and if it's not then you don't bother? Actually, football is probably the one that I least likely to watch. I can, it doesn't, I don't instantly have to get up and go out of the room or anything, but it's if I was given a choice, it wouldn't be my first choice, which probably upsets a few people, but if everybody liked football, then nobody would like anything else. We'd have a lot less sports, I guess. Mind you, it's also interesting what gets counted as a sport. There's some very odd things, but things like remote control models apparently are a sport. So I don't know quite what the definition is, but I can understand sort of football and things like that, but flying a kite is also a sport apparently. I'm sure there will be lots of people that would disagree with you on that theme hospital, but I'm not one of them. They do seem to get paid an awful lot of money, don't they? I mean, I know it's hard work to sort of potentially to run for 90 minutes, but you get the marathon runners that do that all the time. They don't get anything like that sort of money, even from sponsorship or things like that. I think my wife has decided that she's decided that she don't want to listen to the stream tonight. Okay, then you have the so-called well, yeah, that's even odder in a way, isn't it? I mean, if you were to take esports and say, I don't know, things like the Wii tennis, for example, esports makes sense. Even golf on a computer, perhaps, but Call of Duty, and it's almost like they're calling sports anything that you don't do for a job. But then again, some of these gamers do it for a job, so yeah, I don't understand the definition of esports really. I'd be hard pressed to say what is and what isn't included in that. And so, I mean, when you get to the sort of extreme of where somebody sat with a mouse and keyboard playing a game is esports, well, why isn't this what I'm doing here? I mean, I'm physically doing something not much different to what they're doing. I'm just looking in a different direction. I don't know. It's a weird thing, isn't it? I'm sure it makes sense to somebody, but I wish it made sense to me. And you ever say, which I do know which I'd rather be doing. Esports sounds a bit too much like exercise. Although I don't actually mind exercise. Oh dear. I used to walk something like a mile a day up a quite a steep hill. Not done that for a while. I don't know why I stopped, but it seems like I used to go to a gym every day at lunchtime, and it wasn't. I didn't do massive exercise. It wasn't sort of bodybuilding type stuff. It was just fitness type exercises. And then I think we stopped for some reason and just never started again. It's kind of odd how if you don't continue, you get into a habit of doing something, and if you stop it, it just goes out the window. Indeed, yeah. Well, you're having to concentrate a lot to listen. You're doing physical activity. You're typing on some form of keyboard. Sounds like it qualifies to me. Olympic chair sitting. Now that might be an interesting sport, wouldn't it? I don't think I'd stand a chance of winning it though, to be honest. I actually can't sit still particularly very long. In fact, probably first stream is about the longest I actually do sit still. Because when I'm not streaming, I'll tend to sort of swivel around in the chair and obviously stand up and sit down and things like that, and go and do things and come back, and yeah, the 2.5 hours while I'm streaming is about the longest I sit in a chair. Even when I'm working, I'm very conscious of not staring at a screen for very long, so I'll stop, turn, look out the window about every 15 minutes or so, like that. So you get a gold in Olympic chair sitting. Yeah. I also have the problem I can't. I end up. I don't know if I'm kind of putting pressure on a nerve, but I end up with an extreme compulsion to stand up if I stay sitting too long. I kind of have to get, well, this chair that I'm sitting in here was kind of one I had to spend quite a long time looking for when I bought it, to have a seat cushion that wasn't too firm, wasn't too soft and stuff like that. So I know I wouldn't win any sort of competition for sitting. I keep wondering what those gaming chairs are like for sitting in for long periods of time. Some are supposed to be really good, but then there's other reports of the fact that they're quite hard to sit in, especially if you're not actually gaming, because when you're gaming you tend to sit back, I guess, unless you get excited. But when I'm doing stuff like this, it's actually quite hard to sit back. I really should, because it supports my back better. But I have a tendency to lean forward all the time, and apparently those gaming chairs are not really good for that. But it's kind of an expensive thing to find out that they don't work. They've got some nice colours though. Do with this being just a bit sharper. Okay. I'm actually just contemplating whether to use a file. I hate it when that happens. You just move one thing and everything falls. I ought to put them away, I guess. But it's some of the older work that I did, the pyrography and what have you, and of course people from time to time ask to see it, so I've never actually bothered putting it away just yet. It just sits on a like desk type extension type box that's sat next to me, but from time to time when I get something like this out, they just go bang 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 bang, which is sort of really irritating when it happens. Okay, let's see if I can just give this nib a little bit of a sort of a polish. If nothing else, it'll rough up this leather strop a little bit, which will be good when I come to try and do some sharpen up some chisels, because the rough surface will have a slightly more polishing effect. Oh, Steve-o! Sorry I didn't see you drop into the studio there. Welcome, good evening. I'm doing well, and I trust you are doing well as well. Haven't managed to catch a stream for the past few days. Unfortunately, I've been working, so I've missed out on both the Farm Simulator, and you were doing something like Call of Duty or something the other night, was it? can't remember. But nice to see you around again. I'm trying to do random non-random starts at the moment. With a tool which is being a little bit irritating. And for once I'm not talking about internet trolls. Oh, I don't know. It's as I often say, it's not just about the game. It's about the person broadcasting as well. But I enjoy the style in which you play the game, so you know it's. I guess I guess you play the game in a style in which I would tend to want to play it, or do play it when I'm playing, which is why it sort of is fascinating to watch. But same with all the other stuff like the ETS2 and what have you. I don't play the things like Call of Duty though. So it's Scraperboard. Yeah. Sorry, I'm just laughing at Theme Hospital's comment there. We were talking about football earlier on. Yeah, what it is, it's a backing material which for this particular manufacturer is like a thick paper or a thin card. Porcelain clay goes over the top and then Indian ink. Some manufacturers will use a thicker, like a hardboard behind it to stabilise the board a bit more. And whilst, shall we say, the porcelain clay is, in quotes, the professional thing, you can actually, instead of the clay, you can get it like foil backed, so it comes out looking more silver, for example, or gold. And you can get into the really fancy things like, you know, rainbow coloured mylar and things like that, but I enjoy the white stuff here, and I've got some of the others to play about with, and we'll, you know, maybe do it one day on stream. But this is taking quite a bit of learning the way to do things, which is quite fascinating. How is it to break the clay? I've never tried Theme Hospital. I've never broken a piece. I think the first time I ever did this, I did cut a piece in half, but I took my time doing it, so I actually cut through with a scalpel. It took about 4 or 5 cuts to get through. I suspect if I really bent this, I probably would crack it off. I'd more than likely crack the surface, the black off first. But it's not something I've particularly wanted to try. That's me being a bit of a cheapskate, I guess, because I hate wasting materials, and it would kind of feel like a waste of material. I do have a shop. For Christmas, my wife did buy me a shop bought version of this with pre-printed, and I know with that you get a little test board for people to practice on. So maybe I'll try it on that one of these days. But I haven't particularly had any incidents of breaking it. The thing that happens more, I guess, is you'll get a little bit of either the clay, I don't know if it's the clay breaking off or just the Indian ink breaking off the top as a top layer. I'll get let's just see if I can, just odd. You see, there's like a white spot there, which it's a little bit out of focus, but it's just like that was just a little bit of the black ink which just came away. Um, just lifted it off, cracked it off in some way, I guess. I don't know if it was the clay that separated or just the ink on the top, but that's about the only thing I've come across. I mean, it bends. I mean, I'm not going crackers, I'm flexing this, but you know, it's not cracking off or anything. When I do that, I don't really want to take it much further than that, so I don't think it's going to be particularly a problem. If I put it over the end of the desk and really bent it down, then yeah, I'm sure I'd probably do a lot of damage. Hiya, good evening, welcome to the studio this evening. Style, that's a good word for it. It is a good word for it. It's because I could almost see you being a farmer, Steve, from the point of view of that sort of pragmatic, we just get on with it type of thing, and attitude. So yeah. The only problem with real life, of course, is crops don't grow in 3 days. And you can't amass £1 million in about a couple of months. But otherwise everybody would be farmers, I think. What is surprising about Clayboard here is just how quickly it blunts tools. I mean, I don't think this is a particularly hardened tool that I'm using. It's probably just like pressed steel, but it is surprising just how quickly dragging it across clay does actually blunt it to the point where you either have to apply a lot of force or you have to sharpen it somehow or get another one out. But given that effectively I've probably gone, this is now sort of blunt enough for me to start wanting to sharpen it or potentially replace it, and yet I've not even done this whole piece with this one tool. I was using another one when I started, so it does wear down tools quite a bit. Have to keep turning it around to find a sharp edge. Yeah, no, I know you've mentioned that a few times. I mean, as you say, there's kind of with most of those games, there's no incentive to not be shot, really, is there? There's no consequences to it. All the kids and whatever that were playing, if they sort of had any form of consequences, there just wouldn't be. They'd all be cowering around walls and things like that, and it's kind of a. I think you have played one or two games which allow you to use a little bit of the sort of learned skills. I'm trying to think of the one with the great big maps that you were playing at one time, but yeah, it's I was going to say it would kind of be fun if when somebody got killed in a game, they got sort of banned from the game for 24 hours. But of course, to sort of give them some form of consequences. But of course, the game developers wouldn't want that because they wouldn't make as much money. It does help a bit, Graia, just dropping it, but it doesn't actually last very long. As I meant to get a small sharpening stone out and really have a go with it. I can't get to it easily, but what I might do is just get a small needle file out and just file the edges a little bit, so that might help. Yep. Armour. Okay. Yeah, I did enjoy watching you play that. Some of the other ones, like the Call of Duty, I find frustrating to watch because because there is no, it's just dead and respawn type of thing, and I don't tend to watch those at all. It's just sort of, but as you know, it's just run, shoot. If you're dead, just run and shoot, and it seems to get really repetitive. I know when you're playing it, it's different, but watching it is kind of. It could do, Graia. I mean, I was using a scalpel blade, and I actually found that blunted quite quickly as well. When I was doing the roof, just doing the sharp edge of a scalpel blade, and they're quite. Mind you, I suppose with those they've got a very sharp edge, but you kind of need something like that. There are other tools as well. I'm actually thinking maybe something like I was going to say like a glass sliver might be quite a thing to do. Battlefield. Not sure I've seen that one. I wonder how many kids grow up wanting to go in the army thinking it's going to be like, something like Call of Duty or something like that. And find out that life is not quite the same, even in training. Oh, I don't know. I can imagine quite a few do that. Um, I can quite imagine that. I'm just trying to think. I don't know what it is, but it's sort of something really sort of makes me think that, you know, a large proportion of youngsters, for some reason, just would not connect the fact that they just don't respawn in real life. But yeah. Yeah, and I suppose, yeah, some of the films as well, where the, you know, let's say the Rambo style films, where, you know, the hero just manages to miss every single bullet, and it's kind of like, you know, you got a submachine gun of some kind going, you can't really dodge those bullets that well. At least I don't imagine you can have no experience of that, but or, you know, a fully automatic of some kind. But, mind you, the thought crosses my mind that I suspect, and I only suspect, but I suspect, yeah, the guys like yourself who were professionals at it probably didn't use automatic all that often. Oh, it's somebody was somebody was, I can't remember, it was the other day, Gray, wasn't it? Somebody was on about oh, you know, I don't know, I'll just make this up, you know, blokes ironing. You know, it's a woman's job, and it's kind of like, would you like to go tell some of the commandos that who do their own ironing? You know, I don't think they're going to agree with you. You know, cleaning and washing your own clothes and stuff like that. Oh dear. I didn't watch it. The hospital. I rarely watch much television at all these days. About the only thing I will watch on television, other than the odd bit of stuff at lunchtime when my wife's got it on, is Doctor Who. It starts again on the 19th of September. In case you wanted to know and didn't know. blimey, that's gone. Let's have a look. Sorry, I'm looking at another screen. I don't do too bad actually. To say we've got cats here, as you guys have seen, I don't get a lot in around the fans, and mine's water cooled, so I don't get it. Doesn't. I don't have heat sinks. I have, of course, the radiator, but I don't seem to get a lot, which is quite surprising. I do keep it vacuumed every so often, but. Oh, dogs are nice. Well, some dogs are nice. I actually prefer bigger dogs over smaller dogs. Smaller dogs tend to be... Well, I know big dogs are things like Alsatians, and they'll bite you quite a bit, but they tend to be less vicious than little tiny things. Just not the fur. Scraperboard is good for fur, so you know, pet portraits on Scraperboard is good, because of course every little scratch is fur, so it really makes a good medium for doing dogs and cats on, well, anything else as well, mice, dormouse, owls. You can get some big cats as well. There's I don't mean big cats as in big cats, I mean cats that are large. There's one which is, oh, I've forgotten what it is now, but it's something like a let's say domestic cat and like a leopard crossbreed. I forgot what the thing's called. But those things sort of tip to tail are about 4 feet, and if they sort of stand on the hind legs and put the paws out, they sort of can quite easily put their paws on my chest, you know, which is, I'm 6 feet, so you can get some really big cats. You also, I'll have to ask my wife what they're called, because it's a Bengal cats. Obviously from the Bengal tiger, but they apparently also like going for walks, so you can actually put them on a lead, and they are as powerful as dogs are, and of course with their claws, if they get the claws into things, they can really pull. Yeah, and I wouldn't mind betting the cats are in charge as well with that crier. I bet they put the dogs into their place. Indeed. So is this kind of some extra income then? Is it Theme Hospital giving taking dogs for walks? All I want to do is snuggle and maybe lick on them a bit. Oh, the dog's on the cats, yeah. Oh, you're dog sitting. I was kind of about to say I've never had a dog as a pet. That's not strictly true. I did have one for a couple of weeks. But then my grandparents had got 3 Jack Russells, and they gave us one. But within a couple of weeks, for some reason, one of the ones that they had got ill and didn't survive. So the one that they gave me went back to them, because apparently Jack Russells like to be with other dogs. They don't like being on their own, which seems a bit odd as to why I had one, just one. Maybe somebody told me a little not true type thing then, because that's only just occurred to me then. I know it's called Patch because it had a patch over its eye. Patch went back because maybe it was because then Spot, who was the other one, had obviously been living with another dog for a while, and therefore it would have, I don't know. But that's the only time I've ever had a dog, and that was a long time ago now. Must be over 40 years ago. Well, it shouldn't be surprising in a way, I guess, but it kind of is when sort of animals recognise people and things like that. I mean, I know one of our cats will sit on the end of, it'll sit halfway down the road and it'll recognise the car, and it will, as you drive up, the cat will walk up after the car to the drive, and it sort of recognises individual people as well, and it kind of shouldn't be surprising really, I guess, but it's always kind of fascinating, or kind of wow, because the cat sits and waits, and the others do things like that as well, but yeah. It's I don't know why we guess we have this sort of. It's another thing. You kind of almost think animals are stupid, but then but you think your pets are really clever, which is kind of a contradiction, really. And then, of course, the dogs which are trained then are sort of quite amazing, especially all the assistance dogs and things like that, which do things for people. They're kind of amazing animals, really. as demonstrated by many humans. Yeah. uh, who perhaps best illustrate the fact that some of them are dumb in most groups. That one came out a bit brighter than I intended, but that's not a problem. Either that, Gryer, or maybe you should put a filter mesh across some of the air intakes. That might help a little bit. Because if it's getting into the CPU cooler, it's going to coat the rest of the inside of the machine as well. But yeah, 10 degrees, that's a fair loss of airflow. Is that? Definitely worth doing something about. We're getting closer to almost having done this. This phase of filling in the blanks. Oh, yeah, maybe grey. I mean, our cats tend to shed fur all year round. They don't seem to notice them doing it more in summer rather than winter. But there again, I guess if the cats lived outside most of the time, then they probably would. But Ours, they just seem to be continuously molting all the time. So you get hair all over the place. Doesn't matter how much you can hoover the place, you find just small hairs like one here just sitting on the across the lens of the camera, and you kind of wonder where they came from. Well, I don't know where they came from. They came from the cats, but that is one disadvantage of having cats and dogs, is you do tend to get hair all over the place. I think most people that have cats and dogs, they will probably say it's worth the inconvenience that sometimes causes. Now, if you don't have or haven't had pets, it's probably a little bit difficult to understand. But there's kind of something, I don't know, something about an animal like a cat which will, will seek you out and come and want to sit by you or sit on you, or just put as some dogs do, just put a head on your foot or something like that, or just put a paw across you. And there's just something about that which is, which if you've never had a pet, then I guess you just can't follow it. But Fluffy Twiglet, good evening. Welcome to the studio this evening. Was it you the other day that said you didn't like this particular medium? But thank you very much for the comment. Or was that somebody else? I can't remember now. I know I didn't get a chance to ask what was it about this medium that they didn't like, but this is just it's kind of like a sketch at the moment, which you do with a pencil. So it's kind of a roughed out sketch, and there's a lot more work to be done on it. I mean, I know on stream here it looks a lot more complete, but it kind of, all the rocks are floating at the moment here. And it kind of looks a little bit odd. And then we've got one more stone just to put in there. And we've filled in all the stones. So now we go back and do it all again. Now is the time we start to add a little bit more detail into these, add a little bit more of the texturing, and decide which ones we want to be lighter than others and things like that, and then put some mortar into them as well. Oh, okay. You're trying out some digital painting at the moment. So you tried Scraperboard when you were younger, or you tried digital painting when you were younger? I would hope you are using a graphics tablet or similar technology, because otherwise trying to do it with a mouse. Digital painting with a mouse is, if you can do digital painting with a mouse, you are extremely talented. I have seen people who can sign their name using a mouse, but I don't understand how. Right, well I want to make this edge around here certainly stand out more, because I want to be able to see this edge as opposed to this, because it's this bit stood forward. So I want to make sure that I increase the brightness of the stones just around here. Now that one's under the eaves, so I'm going to leave that one alone. I don't really want to just pick the edge out if I can avoid it. I want to kind of apply a little bit of texturing to it. As we do this, so that what you may see me doing now is looking up more at the camera, say at the screen in front of me, because as I mentioned before, it kind of gives me the same view as if I'd stepped back by about 2 or 3 feet, and rather than sort of keep getting up and down on camera, if I just look at my output monitor, it gives me a similar sort of view, and I can kind of see what it would look like from a distance. Pokemon Battle Scene. That sounds quite challenging to do. Blending, blending and smudging colour. Well, even digitally, that's interesting. You start, depending on which brush you're using, I guess, and what package you're using to do the digital painting with. But trying to get, well, especially if you're trying to get a smooth blend, that's can be fun. It certainly can be fun. Trying to do that, but I'm not very good at it myself. It's something I potentially should practice, but I'm not sure I want to practice on stream, just because there's a lot of people do digital art on stream, and it sort of seems like a bit more of just another one. So probably practice that off stream. But you try Scraperboard when you're younger. I'm enjoying it because I like black and white or monochrome. I think, well, it's one reason why I'm enjoying it, and I started doing that with airbrushing, and the pyrography picks up on that, and this kind of picks up on it as well. It's a monochrome style, but I think it becomes easier if you pick a subject that suits Scraperboard. This is kind of a challenge. Animals and animal fur and hair, so I suppose people's hair is probably kind of a natural subject for this style of Scraperboard. Again, you get different styles as well. You get a style which is really thick, heavy scraping, which tends to be the ones you get in art shops, craft shops. So they're sort of outlined, great big areas of scraping, and they literally do the tones through, great big thick lines and then thinner lines. A bit like, if you ever seen was going to say raster scanned images, but in some games, for example, they have like green screens where you just have thicker lines and thinner lines, which are supposed to represent, I don't know, some form of television, for example, and that sort of style is you can do anything with fairly easily, buildings and what have you. But something like this with with an animal with fur, just sort of like a head, the Scraperboard sort of really seems to suit doing that, just because you tend to scrape, well, whatever tool it is, you're scraping lines which are reminiscent of fur. But I haven't yet decided whether it's day or night. No, it hasn't been resolved. I mean, as you look at this, it could, if I get away from the glare. I mean, if you look at the roof, that sort of look as it stands at the moment is sort of highly suggestive of moonlight rather than sunlight. And the fact that the stones are dim is suggestive of moonlight as well. And even me just now picking out these stones just on the corner of this building is still in that keeping. So I haven't really decided yet which it is, and it might just happen that as I apply a little bit more sort of texture, it just turns out to look more like sunlight than moonlight. It could still stay, one way. So it stays 50-50. It could be either way. What might decide it is one of the things I intended to try and do is, there's a path across the front here, is then put some grass maybe here and down the side. So if I'm putting grass, and it'll be lawn type grass, I've got some green ink. This stuff over here. So got some, in theory, specially formulated inks. Might just be normal ink, but I've got some green which I could then paint on the grass. Now if I do that, it's going to be grass green, which of course it wouldn't be like that on a night. If it was a nighttime scene, then it would be silver looking rather than green, and that's a stylized view of grass in at night, but because it still looks green if you've enough light to see it. But a bright green like that would instantly probably say, this is daylight, this is sunlight, and go from there. But cool. Getting stormy skies are really dramatic. They're yeah. If you do stream it, I'd certainly watch some of that. I tell you what, I don't think I am, but let me go. That's not what I want it to do. I'll do it on this screen here, where it does do what I want it to do. I'm going to click follow. There we go. So I am now following you, Fluffy. I keep wanting to call it Fluffy, and I apologise. Fluffy Twiggler. Really does. I know you explained the other night where it comes from, but it kind of does feel a bit like you've just pulled one of those corn snacks out of your pocket. It's got hair on it. So I hope you don't mind that image. But that's the one that comes to mind when I hear when I read your nickname there. But so if you do stream it and I'm available, I'll take a look and just watch, because I love watching people do things like that, and especially if you're going to try a stormy night. I love to see the techniques people use for doing things like that, because I'm not really great at things like sky and sea. So if you're doing it, I will certainly watch to see how it's done. Right, I am Okay. So all I'm doing here, and it might look like I am really lightening these up, but I'm only applying a few extra scratches really, and just those few extra are enough to, you know, quite brighten up the just the edge of stone. And okay, that looks a bit dim, but so what I've got there is that looks just rather a little. Let me just add a little bit more to, just in that area there. It looks really dim. Okay, actually I'm looking in the wrong place. It's there. There's too much space just around there. So what you should see now is this edge, which kind of is catching the light, the moonlight, the sunlight, whatever, is sort of stands out enough that you can see it completely distinct from the space behind it, and it should now have more of a 3D effect, so you can see it sort of standing forward. What you get with quite lights and darks, generally speaking, something that's dark recedes into the background and something that's light comes to the foreground, generally, because sometimes something that's really in the foreground can be really black. So it's often a case of, dark black sits right at the front, and then greys, as you get towards from light to dark, recede backwards, and then in the real distance you get black again. It's a bit of an odd thing, but generally speaking, darker means further back to your eyes, and lighter means closer towards you. And also, sort of the mistier something looks, the further away it is. So sharp things are closer to you, out of focus, misty things are further away. I'll try not to fluffy twiglet. And I'm not doing Jonathan Ross impressions. I'm trying to say it properly, but thank you very much for allowing me to mispronounce your name. Oh dear. Okay, so I've done an edge down there, which would suggest that it's catching light. So if that's catching light, then it would suggest that we'd probably catch some on this side here as well. I mean, I know on the reference picture there's a tree, and the tree may have a shadow, but I don't care. So I'm just going to add a little bit of light on the edge of here as well. I might take that away ultimately, but just for the moment I'm just going to add some light in. I'm going to assume that this thatch is going to create a bit of a shadow, so I'm probably going to miss the top couple of out. Now these stones here have been done by just making like pricking marks in the scraperboard rather than scratches. So all I'm going to do is add some more and dig in a little bit more. Trying not to do them in lines, I'm trying to be fairly random about it so that I don't start, create a straight looking edge. I want it to be a rough stone looking texture. So and again, that's now just come a little bit brighter. Probably could do with being a bit more. Like that, and that's just again just a few like pricking motions, and it's yeah. When you look at it from a distance, it looks, because they merge together, the little prick marks, it looks more a lot more brighter. I was going to say, I think probably everybody, if you say Pokemon to anybody, they all think of Pikachu, the yellow thing. But any others, Zapdos for some reason does kind of, but the other names don't mean anything to me, I'm afraid, Fluffy Twiglet. But two electric mice against one large bird. That's kind of an interesting image in a way, an electric mouse. Is that a kind of the fighting using some form of electricity, is it, or is it because I'm guessing sort of the images I've seen of Pikachu, I wouldn't, and it is just images, then I've never seen any of the cartoons or know any of the lore around them, but I kind of wouldn't think of it as a mouse. But the two electric mice does kind of give an interesting image. Actually, what it makes me think of is like to be honest, is like the wind-up mice, and two of those racing around a bird. It's okay, Fluffy Twiglet. That's okay. You go ahead. That's not bad, isn't it? I am assuming that this is actually your image rather than one that you've just picked. But if it is your image, that ain't bad. That ain't bad at all. For some reason, in the line drawing, for some reason, the bird looks like it's grinning. lightning, yeah. That's gonna be interesting to portray. I'm looking forward to seeing this. And if I've got it right, it's Pikachu on the left, isn't it? I think. No, that looks good. And the say if it is you have done that drawing Fluffy Twiglet, the foreshortening on the legs looks right and everything. So that ain't bad. That ain't bad at all. Of course, I'm not an expert. I probably couldn't draw that myself, so yeah, I think it looks good. Just to sort of have that little caveat in there. I'm not really one that to actually judge something like that, but I think it looks good. Is that again? I'm assuming that you have drawn that one. So is that something you came up with, or is it reminiscent of a scene from some of the adventures? Because the reason I ask that is one of the things which I find hard to do is sometimes I can see an image in my mind, but even though I can see an image in my mind, I can't put it down on paper. And I find people who can do that to be absolutely amazing, the way in which they can just imagine something and then draw it. I kind of have to draw something and see how that, and then get an image from what I've drawn to see it in my mind, to be able to then continue that image, if that makes sense. I don't find it really easy, and it's a pity, because in theory it's a pity, I guess, because I think I see lots of interesting scenes and images in my mind that I'd love to be able to paint or draw or Scraperboard or whatever, but I just can't get that image out of my mind and put it down on a piece of paper to then be able to do whatever it is with whichever art form. And as I say, I think people who can are absolutely amazing. Okay, so we've added. Now if I'm going to shadow that much, I'm going to have to extend that a little bit down. Otherwise it wouldn't be in shadow. I think what I'm also going to do is do a little bit just along . Now although I've sort of brightened these up, they may, and here, this may not be the final brightness. I may decide to make them even whiter still as I change some of the other shading around it, because they may start to look really dim. Alternatively, I may just leave them alone. It's sort of the next stage of going over. I've done a real sort of rough outline. We now go in and add what's exactly more detail, but we're working more towards the middle ground of the picture where we are sort of starting to firm up details and shades before we sort of do the final tweaking on things that, you know, just edges and bits and pieces. Although, as I say, I've still got some sort of path. This kind of wants grounding. It's floating in mid-air at the moment, so some sort of path and maybe grass or something at the bottom. But so at this stage, we're just now going to start and go back through and add some texture in to these stones, so they're not just a simple flat things. So, you know, there'll be odd bits of brightness around to represent the fact that the stones are rough cut, you know, or they're not even cut at all. They're just being picked up out of a field at some point in the past, so they've got really rough sides. And then once we've gone over that, we do have mortar to put in, which may well be just a case of going in all of these black spaces that you can see here with just, you know, picking little flecks of black out, just so that they're not black. It doesn't matter how long it took Fluffy Twiglet, because you've done it. That's the thing. Yeah, it may have taken an hour, it may have taken 40 hours, it may have taken 10 minutes. The fact that you've done it, you will get better at it by practicing. And yeah, references, yeah, great, no problem. 84 guy, good evening. Didn't you pop in earlier? Texturing hype. If there's one thing that sort of bothers me, but I would prefer not to hear, and I hear it a lot on some streams, is sort of things like, you know, that hype, you know, texturing hype, follower hype, I don't know, new harvester hype. It's kind of a bit overused now. But yeah, I don't think I've heard it on my stream yet, apart from just now with you, Graya. That's not a problem. Right, so let's and now it's a case of where, you know, I've got to add texture in here. I'm just saying, where do I start? One of the places I do start is with this stone here, because this stone here is looking really dark. I don't think I've got enough skill on this yet to really do justice to these stones such that you can take a magnifying glass to them and they'll look like stones. It is going to be more stylized at the moment, and maybe that's ultimately what my style is in terms of doing Scraperboard. I haven't developed one yet, shall we say. I'd love to be able to do hyperrealism, which is a style which you see, well, basically hyperrealism would be a style where you look at something and it looks like a photograph. Now, either a black and white photograph or, you know, a colour photograph if it was done on digital art or airbrushing. And you're hard pressed, you stare at it for long enough trying to work out whether it is a photograph or not. I'd love to get enough skill to get to that stage, but yeah. Okay, I shall try and depending on, and I've got to go look at flooring at some point tomorrow, but I'll do my best to try and look in Fluffy Twiglet. If you do, I'd like to see it. But you know, it's I am hoping one of the things that come out of Twitch Creative and potentially out of me, big sort of ambitions here a bit, but is I think there's a lot of people that kind of think art or artists just can or just do, and I know there's a lot of people that think computer art, it's a case of people just go to the computer, draw me an X or draw me a tree, something like that, which of course doesn't happen. But I think there's a lot of people that doubt, just think, like, because to some extent they see the end result, they just think somebody sort of did that in 10 minutes or whatever, and they were born to being able to do that. And I don't think they actually realise that it takes a lot of, even when these, Rembrandt, if you like, when he started, he probably, looked like he'd drawn or he'd painted with a paintbrush stuck between his toes, and he was blindfolded at the time. They weren't perfect when, even if they are when they finish, they're not perfect when they start. And you've had to, if you say you've had to erase it, you've had to start again. You've had, a lot of people don't realise that everybody has to essentially start that way. There are some people, I admit, that probably pick up a pencil and are reasonably really good to start with, but then they get a lot better. And I'm kind of hoping, in a way, that things like Twitch and people who broadcast stuff will eventually, in a small way, which will grow, get people used to the idea that everybody starts not being able to do something, and then they, through practice, through doing it they get better, and the results get better. And it doesn't matter whether it's drawing, I guess, or whether you talk about computer coding, or when you're playing a game. Everybody who plays, first time you ever play Call of Duty, you probably don't ever manage to hit anybody, but you get better. It's that sort of thing. And but I think in games people expect it because of there's so many people played it and tried it and found that out. But it gets if it gets it out there about artists, then that's fine. Dear. Okay. I've just got a bad memory then, Adi. So if you didn't get well 10 past 8, it couldn't have been you. Oh dear. I'm tired today. That's what it is. That's my excuse, and it's warm. The air conditioner's managed to reduce the temperature in here by half a degree. Okay, thank you. So, that window told me it was reconnecting. I suddenly thought, oh, I haven't dropped out again, have I? But it doesn't look like it, I'm glad to say. Right, I should get on with this instead of doing quite so much talking, shouldn't I? Again. Yeah, so we added a bit of texturing in there, so at least it looks like there's actually a stone there now, which it didn't a little while ago. And I'm probably going to end up just doing is dotting around a bit. without any sort of real plan, I'm just adding lighter bits to stones, just as I kind of feel like it around. And you'll see me looking up, as I say, as I mentioned before, just to see how it looks from a distance, and then we'll maybe then we'll go over it again and you know, and again until it at least looks reasonable. Now I'm going to assume that's a big stone. I'm not copying real stones. I'm not copying any sort of picture at this point. I am literally just doing whatever I think looks not too bad. So oops, that one I want to leave, it's in the shadow. I nearly did something I didn't want to do there. Some of these scratches aren't particularly deep or anything like that, they're quite fine, so I'm not making them stand out really white, just literally trying to add sort of layers of in colour, if that sort of makes sense. Yeah. Sorry, sometimes I read chat, I think, have I seen that comment, and I have to just have another look and just check. So what you should start to see now is that this side of the cottage is just generally starting to look a little bit brighter than it did before. Little bit, not much at this stage. I probably was intending to make it look a little bit brighter than it's looking at the moment, but this is the difference between the camera and me looking at it. Some of it I think is possibly lighting angles, that sees it differently, but Okay. Were you Ah, okay. You've been drilling lots of holes. Don't you need to do lots and lots? Mind you, I don't know how many holes are there, but it could be deceptive. But it kind of looks like there's probably only I was about to say a couple of hundred, but I guess a couple of hundred is still quite a lot for some of the for some events, I guess, to get people to pay money to pull out a cocktail stick. I don't know why I had the impression of kind of like you needing to have like a few thousand holes. Because you don't, do you, really? 224, which is quite a lot, isn't it? And I guess if you charge, what would you be charging? So like 50p a go or something like that. That's still a heck of a lot of money. Weren't you going to have a go at airbrushing on stream this afternoon? Oh, you've been at a show, haven't you? Yeah, so you probably would have been unable to do that. So were you working there, or were you just visiting? Is this one of the fairs that you were working at? And did you have a good day, whether you were working there or not? This area around here looks dark now, so okay. That doesn't sound very pleasant, given that it seems to have been quite humid this afternoon. I don't know if it obviously has been the same down there from the way you mentioned that. It got really sort of warmy, humid, I guess, rather than warm here about 4 o'clock. All of a sudden, it just sort of happened. It wasn't as though it rained or anything. It just suddenly started getting really warm. And it wasn't so bad. We had a bit of a breeze for a while, and then that just vanished, and I've had the this cooler running ever since, and it's not, well, I was about to say it's not making much of an indent, but there again I have got the studio door open, so it's doing its best to cool the rest of the house at the same time, which is not the best use of them, but kind of hoping at least it will cool off the bedrooms, and it'll make it a bit easier to sleep. And not the sort of thing you can wear shorts at, really. I'm going to have to attempt to put in some mortar at some point on here, because otherwise I'm going to be applying texture, and I'll call it colour, but texture and shade against the black in between the stones, and if I then put mortar between them, what's going to happen is all of a sudden they're going to change their overall sort of shade, which may well be, you know, not what I intended it to look like. Not quite sure how I want to put that mortar in either. Whether I do it as sort of fine lines or whether I do it as fine dots. I'm just trying a little bit around here. All I really want to do is just to take away that complete black space between the stones. I'm not really looking to add a lot of brightness to it at this stage anyway. It really is just a so it doesn't look black. Not sure quite how that's you probably, I don't think, can see what I'm doing there, but let's just see if I can show you. Oh, I've got a glass of water there I'd forgotten about. No, you can't actually see it on. Can't actually see it on stream at all. And that doesn't help. Okay. And again, it's something I see more of the detail. I'm seeing more of the detail here. It's doesn't help when I knock the camera. But I've just put in little tiny, best description is pinpricks in between the stones here, which just takes away the real dark blackness, but it's not actually coming out on the camera at the moment. Now starting to see some of the different just varied sort of scratch stone texture. It's it's a bit of a it's a bit of a pretentious word in a way, because I'm not sitting down making these things look like stones. I'm just kind of randomly adding lighter bits in, so you get lighter and darker bits, so the stones don't look flat. They look like they've got bits that stick out that are catching the light, and other bits which are obviously slight valleys, so they're slightly in shade, or they've got maybe they've got dirt on them, or they're slightly, because it's natural stone, some bits of the stone will be darker than others. Some might have little reflective bits in, there might be a little bit of mica in there or something like that, which just catches light. So it's really sort of just doing more of what I've started to do in there, so that they start to look a little bit more rough. But yeah, on stream, I really need to do something about the black areas between the stones. They're too black for the stream. It needs to look like there's something there. I know in real life the contrast, that the mortar would be almost the same colour as the stones, but it would make it really hard to see on an image like this. So I don't want to go into that level of realism, only because I'm not able to actually represent it as it really ought to be if I want to go to that level of hyper-realism. But that's not looking too bad. As I'm looking at that, as it just is there now, the thatch looks like it's coming over the top of the wall, just in that small section. I'd be quite pleased with just that small section as an artwork in its own right. At that level there. It's a pity I didn't do that on a small boat to start with. I'd probably be going, well, it's done now. That window probably wants to be highlighted a little bit more, especially sort of bottom left, where we'd sort of catch more sunlight. The top right would be in shade. Obviously there's quite a bit of, it's set back in the stone, and it's got the thatch over the top, so just sort of things I'm picking out as where to do bits of work next. And some stones are still too dark. Anyway, it's 10:15, and so I was kind of just doing a sort of a wrap-up analysis of what I've done so far tonight, just to see where I'm going next, and give you guys an idea of what I'm thinking about. But we've gone over quite a bit. We've completed sort of putting stones in on this wall here, highlighted the edge here, which is now, you can't, I'm pointing again and you can't see. So filled in the stones that in this area here. So we've got them there to work on. We've established the shapes and the different scratch marks and directions, sort of establish different looks so they don't all look uniform. Lightened up this edge here so it now stands proud of the background stones of this part of the cottage from this end part, so they stand out quite nicely. And done the same thing on this edge here and a little bit on the edge of the window, so this window will want some of that done to it as well. And we've done some down this edge here just to highlight the edge, so that edge is catching a little bit more light. And then we started to add texture and brightness to bits of the stones around here so they don't look as flat, and we need to extend that a little bit more and then do something in the black areas between each stone just to stop it looking as black as it does. I have tried little tiny pin pricks. I may need to make all the stones a little bit brighter such that then I can do little fine scrapes between the stones, and then that will look a pale grey against the whiter looking stones, and that may be the way in which we fill in the black. Something to experiment a little bit with tomorrow. But anyway, I am now going to call it a night. I'm going to say thank you to everybody that's watching. It has been 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 people watching. It's been a fun night. I've enjoyed doing this. I've enjoyed having you guys watch and chat. Thank you very much. I don't know if there's anybody watching that's not following, but if you are not following, I would appreciate it if you did so. But if you don't want it, that's quite alright. You can of course follow me on Twitter. Yeah, I got that right. At Zaraganart. Details will be on the end plate. They're also below the window. And if you just want to catch me tomorrow night, I'll be on from 8 PM in the UK, 1700 GMT, or about 2 hours 20 minutes ago, but tomorrow. May well be on in tomorrow afternoon. Don't know. Not sure what I'll do. Maybe some jewellery. I've got some new stuff to play with, so I might try some of that. Or I might do some punchcraft. We will just see what I feel like if I manage to get on tomorrow afternoon, but I'm not sure about that. If I do come on tomorrow afternoon, it'll be sort of somewhere in the order of 2 or 3 PM in the UK. And anybody that is watching, suggest you also try and catch what am I thinking of? Because you guys don't know who I'm thinking of. Fluffy Twiglet was who I was thinking of tomorrow morning, who may well stream doing some of his electronic art, which would be a great thing to watch, I think, because it looks like it will turn out to be quite a really good piece. Anyway guys, Steve-O, thank you very much. Theme Hospital, you too, have a good night, and everybody else, see you later.